Okay, thanks everybody for participating in week one's discussion. I just wanted to say a few words before we close out the first module. Um, I really liked this article, and this is why I wanted to start with this one because it really does raise some interesting questions about how the various disruptions that Gen AI will bring are going to work and how people need to adapt to them. So this article, AI Won't Give You a New Sustainable Advantage, is by Jay Barney and Martin Reeves. Now, Jay Barney is one of the preeminent voices in management. And interestingly enough, we interviewed him for a dean position at this university last year. It wound up not working out, but he's a very much a respected voice in this. So I wanted to look at this article. The basic argument here is that this is a disruptive technology, and disruptive technologies are just as likely to remove an existing advantage than it is to create a new one. So there's this idea of creative destruction where anytime something remarkable happens technologically, there are losers and there are winners. And so the question is, okay, if you are, you recognize that there's something that you can do that's really going to speed up because of Gen AI, whether that's creating marketing materials or sending out, messages to prospective clientele, or it's, coming up with better workflows or whatever, you can guarantee that, given the speed with which the price of these things is going down, that everybody has that too. So there's a tendency to think, aha, I've got this great secret weapon now. It's not secret. Anything you can do with Gen AI, everybody else can do also. So that raises some questions about, okay, well, yes, you can go ahead and grab these time and cost savings, but recognize that everybody else is going to have those time and cost savings also. So if you are not gaining any kind of advantage, this is just going to become table stakes. And so things will be moving faster and things are going cheaper, but your competitive position is not really changing at all. They also made the point that the first mover advantage does not seem to be present with this particular technology. So, uh, and the reason for this is because whatever you learn from the AI becomes input into the next AI, the next iteration of it. And as AI gets smarter every day, you are using an older technology. And so anybody who moves second not only gets to benefit from the smarter AI and the data that you have now added to the AI, but they can also see your strategic changes and benefit from the knowledge that you have gained. So there's almost like a disincentive to be the first mover in a way like this. So what do we do in this kind of situation if we want to, really make sure that we either gain some advantage or at the very least we don't lose the advantages that we had that kept us afloat in the first place? So one thing that they point out is that there's a tendency, at least in theory, to think that proprietary data sets are going to make you competitive because, of course, data is what feeds AI algorithms. So you have data that you have collected over time. Nobody else has that data, whether it's, customer, transcripts of customer conversations or it's, um, logs of systems that you have created and you get to know all, you have data that other people don't have. Well, so you would think that that would give you a unique advantage. However, they make the claim that proprietary data is not necessarily going to give you an advantage when Gen AI hits. And the reasons for that are they give four. This idea of functional equivalence. Okay, you have a customer database. Well, everybody's got a customer database or any kind of data that you have that you've collected for your organization. Very likely other organizations have collected data that is analogous for them, so they're going to be able to have that also. There's also this idea of diminishing returns. Okay, so is 20 years of data really going to be any better than 2 years of data? And you may have vast amounts of data, but data that doesn't yield any kind of insights is not really going to be advantageous. So um, there you may have data that is valuable, but it lets you make a decision that's easily imitable by people who didn't have that data. Yeah, so there's that easy imitation idea also that they can your uh, insights that you gained from your data uh, are going to be easily imitated, are going to be reflective in your strategic decisions, which are going to be visible to competitors, and they'll be able to benefit from imitation. And then, of course, there's the fact that when you have data and you regard it as a key asset, you now have to dedicate more resources to the protection and governance of that data. And some of you did point this out in your discussion. So now there's, it's kind of like when you own a really fancy, expensive car, you now have to worry about keeping that car, safe and protected and clean. And so there's more organizational effort going to maintain a data lake that isn't necessarily going to yield any value in the long term. Okay, so what do you do? Their suggestion was that generative AI is not going to give any new advantages, but it will amplify the advantages that you already have. And this refers to those resources that have made you competitive in the market. And those are resources that are valuable, rare, inimitable, and non-substitutable. And so many of you in your discussions actually thought about, okay, well, think about what my organization has that is only going to get better with Gen AI. So I already have something pretty unique and valuable. How is AI going to make it even more unique and more valuable? And so, just as an example, so some of the things you commented on, I'm reluctant to actually just address names, but if you don't have a problem with revealing names, maybe I'll just go ahead and talk about names. But so one of you works in journalism and mentioned that the reputation of a news outlet is something that is valuable, and also the contacts. So in order to get the interviews and the information that you need, you have to have basically the Rolodex. And these are resources that are not easily imitated, but they are you can use AI to enhance those. Another example comes from construction. So somebody has a relative with a construction company, and they have these capabilities in 3D modeling and also relationships with customers. And so as tedious things can be offloaded onto Gen AI, these capabilities can be enhanced. And so you can spend more time with customer relationships and more time with those difficult to imitate skills, know-how when it comes to 3D modeling. AT&T, so AT&T is obviously a huge telecom company, and they do have those data sets and relationships, but they also have some very different, as a company with enormous startup costs, they have a lot of resources that fall into this VRIN model. So, for example, the network infrastructure, not very many companies have a global network infrastructure. They also have ownership of spectrum. So they have they own certain rights to the electromagnetic spectrum that only they can use. And regulatory know-how, relationships, and also understanding regulations in and out, because it's a highly regulated industry. We also have people in higher education who talked about, well, we already have student relationships and a set of integrated systems that aren't necessarily present everywhere. B&B Automotive, best of breed standard operating procedures that can be amplified with Gen AI. So what is valuable is we have these operating procedures that not everybody does. So we're really good at this, and we can actually amplify that advantage by using AI resources to really build those out even more. And Amazon Web Services. So a great deal of engineering know-how and understanding, the importance of things like root cause analysis. Well, you can actually accelerate root cause analysis by using generative AI. And so now you have an example of not only being able to dedicate, time and resources to those core advantages, but you can have Gen AI actually amplify, speed up and enhance that particular skill set. Okay. And so some of you commented on just, the general game changes. So they call this a game changer. Well, how is the game changing? And somebody said, well, Gen AI is now just table stakes. And that's actually right. If you are not using it, you are just at a disadvantage. You're not even at the table anymore. Um, Another point somebody made was that data governance is now more important than ever, and this is true. Since the beginning of the analytics revolution, we've been talking about how important it is to have really good data governance procedure. Well, that's even more important now because, if data is your secret asset, if it's your secret weapon, then you do have to make sure that you are protecting that. And then really interesting point legally, this is a really interesting time to be an intellectual property lawyer because there's no clarity about what's going to happen here. But what will happen when people start trademarking AI creations? So I made a logo for my software. Can I have like a special trademark on that? Can I claim ownership on that? Even though I didn't really create it, I created the prompt. And then if so, what's to keep people from sort of like, staking claim on a bunch of images that they generated and then this closing off a creative space for a lot of other people. Anyway, really interesting discussions this time. I hope you all learned something and enjoyed it. And so we're going to be starting machine learning this week.